The other big thing that they've been doing lately is that they've been posing using AI. They've been posing as potential employees and getting actual jobs because everybody's working remote, especially developers, getting a job using AI to be able to land a job working for any of the big four consulting companies and then coming in that way and then stealing intellectual property.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I'd like to welcome Jerry to our podcast called The Digital Shift. It is so great to have you here. For everyone listening, Jerry Chappee is a cybersecurity leader at Eagle Cybersecurity, which is an organization dedicated to safeguarding businesses and government entities with proactive security, compliance support, and continuous defense solutions. Jerry has been instrumental in guiding both companies and governments through today's evolving threat landscape with practical strategies that balance risk management and innovation. So, Jerry, I'm so happy to have you here. Let's start off by telling everyone where you're calling in from and a little bit about your background.
Hello, hey, it's great to be here. Thank you, thank you. I'm actually calling in from just outside of Boise, Idaho. We've been up here for about 5 years or so now that after I retired out of the military. But a bit about me is that I'm a retired Army colonel from the cyber branch. I spent the last number of years working at, well, helping stand up the Cyber National Mission Force, part of Cyber Command, helping stand up the Space Force as one of the Chief Information Security Officers for the ground control networks, and helping with Army Futures Command to try and bring new innovation into the military.
And
In a
that's,
nutshell, that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so.
well, gotcha. First off, thank you for your service.
Sure thing. You're very welcome.
And for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, the way we structure these podcasts is we go over the background of the leaders in the technology and cybersecurity industry. And then from there, we're going to discuss the trends in the industry, focus on what's working well for Eagle Cybersecurity, and then also looking into the future to see what's about to happen next. So, Jerry, in your current role, can you walk us through what a day in the life is like and where your focus is?
Right now, focus is trying to stay focused in multiple different areas. Right. I know it's really difficult to do that because the threat landscape is so large and ever changing. We have threats coming in from nation threats from North Korea and Russia and Iran and every place else, but also mom and pop issues and stuff of that nature of people misconfiguring things. So we spend a good portion of our time working against the nation threats, but also trying to improve the compliance and the usability with the users to make sure that they can operate their systems accurately and correctly. Because it makes it so much easier for the nation threats or other threat actors to be able to compromise the system when it's one either not configured correctly or they're using weak passwords or no passwords at all, still leaving the default passwords in. So I spent a lot of time both working against nation threats and also doing the teaching of password complexities and passphrases and things of that nature.
Okay, so when you say nation threats, can you drill down into that a little bit more? Give us two or three examples.
Well, one of the big ones right now lately has been North Korea, and there've been There's two slices of how North Korea has actually been working in lately as a nation threat. One, they come straight out and try and hack into or compromise and getting into systems, uh, primarily banking or other companies, municipalities, a lot of times. But the other big thing that they've been doing lately is that they've been posing using AI. They've been posing as potential employees and getting actual jobs because everybody's working remote, especially developers, getting a job using AI to be able to land a job working for any of the big four consulting companies and then coming in that way and then stealing intellectual property. So that's a slice of it that has just now started coming on board or becoming prevalent over the last like probably 2 years or so. Since COVID hit and everybody started working from home around the world, that's been a big, big issue. So that's one of the reasons why so many companies are pushing to return to office now, because that way they can verify who is essentially working for them, as opposed to a group of North Korean soldiers.
Oh, okay, that's pretty interesting. So, can you elaborate on how they're using AI?
Well, they work through the first part, obviously, is the interview process. So they'll go through an interview process and they'll have AI up in one window, and they'll be actually discussing in another window using both a green screen and potentially even a false front. So their individual, what they look like, is not the person that's actually being seen by the other by the interviewer. So they're able to pose that way. And then a lot of times also they use a team of people with an earbud in to be able to speak the correct answers. So they have people off that are listening to the interview and creating or asking AI systems what the answers are, what those questions are, and producing those answers back. So that way, that's how they get through the interview process and get hired. But
And
that's really tough to root out if we're not actually able to see the individual. So that's how a lot of the organizations have been able to determine that that was what was wrong, is that we actually ended up hiring North Korean soldiers as part of their IT staff or IT um, offensive IT work teams, and being able to hire those guys. And well, they're walking away with all the intellectual property, because once you give them a username and password into the system, they're that's the definition of an insider threat. Somebody you just give a username and password to, and don't here's the admin rights, start developing, and they start running wild within the networks.
so would you say that literally in-person hacking is the biggest risk to any company?
Yes. Yeah. Uh, I'd say probably 50-50. The other biggest risk to companies is misconfiguration and people not being lazy,
Okay, so can
because
you elaborate on misconfiguration and in what way?
a lot of times people get new systems, new computers, new network devices, and not change the default passwords. And this has been standard practice going back 20, 30 years now, that as soon as you take a system out of the box, you log into it and then you change all the default passwords. But so many people don't do that. And a lot of it has to do with, well, one, either not knowing or not understanding what the actual risks are.
Gotcha.
And that appears to be what happened with FEMA, and why FEMA just lost their CIO and Chief Information Security Officer yesterday,
And
where
that's
standard
because they didn't
practices have been
correctly do
followed.
it.
Correct. Yeah, the standard business practices of cybersecurity. They weren't following them and lost their job because of it.
So you mentioned passwords are obviously a key piece of it, but can you list a couple of what the key standards are of how to make sure you are protecting yourself and your company?
Generally, you want to go through. Uh, they have what's called default passwords on most types of systems, and if you don't change that, both a default password and a default username. So if you don't change those, everybody knows them. Everybody else that's ever bought one of those types of systems knows what those default passwords are. Community strings for network devices and things of that nature. So you want to make sure that you change the default username to something that's very specific or company specific, and then also make sure you change the default password to a passphrase that's not just 1 2 3 4. A passphrase is actually writing out something and changing some of those letters to special characters. So any word that you're using that has an S in it, use a dollar sign. Any word that you use that has the letter A in it, use the ampersand or for the at sign, things of that nature. And it makes a big difference. Anything that has an L or an I in it, change that to an exclamation point. So that's how you create passphrases that work out real well, that are much more difficult to be hacked.
Gotcha. And is there a length of password that is good enough to where it's long enough, but also not too long? Because especially as you get more creative and type in passphrases, there are some sites or companies that don't allow you to go over a maximum number as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. A lot of times, eight's pretty much a minimum. Most places have it set to where you can put in up to 12 or 15, depending on where what the organization and stuff is. Some of them require it to be over 14. Some of the government websites and stuff of that nature require it to be over 14, like the VA and stuff of that nature. I know with working with that organization. set it up to where the passwords have to be a minimum of 15 characters. So that has really helped. But then you run into the same problem, though. You're right, of getting something that's easily rememberable and also difficult to be brute force hacked. But yeah,
Gotcha.
generally it's a minimum of 8.
Minimum of 8. And for those people that like to do 1, 2, 3, 4, if they're willing to flip it around and count backwards and do 4, 3, 2, 1, is that a password guess that is commonly tried, or is that
Yes.
a way for them to still be lazy?
Well, they're definitely lazy, and it's definitely something that's able to be guessed very quickly. And it's not a person that's guessing. We come up with not default, but there's a term, a library for people for being able to create their to be able to guess their passwords. So when people look into how to compromise an individual, they look at their Facebook, they look at their social media, they look at their dogs' names, they look at their houses, their past places that they've lived, because a lot of those things are what people use in their passwords, be it street addresses, be it places that they went to college or high school at things like that, their kids' names, their spouses' names, things of that nature, their favorite car, and they'll put that into a, lack of a better term, a spreadsheet or a database, and then come up with altercations of those words and be able to use that and run that against the account.
So, what suggestions do you have for someone that wants to be security conscious but actually remember their passwords?
That's always the $1 million question. The hardest part, the best recommendation I have is something out of your past, something that's fairly simple that you remember. Like everybody remembers their very first phone number. Everybody remembers their first boyfriend or girlfriend. Everybody remembers their first car, things of that nature, or the elementary school that they went to. Using things like that, but you also then have to remember you have to change it every 90 or 180 days, hopefully. Hopefully you have those parameters set, but then just remember differences of those of that base password. The other big thing too is, along while we're talking about that, different passwords for different accounts. If a lot of people use the same password across accounts, which is never a good idea, but if you have like 3 bank accounts or 3 credit cards and stuff, have that same base password and then use like the last 3 characters or the first 3 characters of your credit card in with that base password. That way you'll know for sure that one, you're not using the same password across all your accounts. They are completely individual for each individual credit card or bank account, and they are less likely to be guessed because you have something that only you know of your say your last 3 or 4 of your bank account number. So if they were to guess your base password, they would still then have to figure out what your last 4 of your bank account are. So that'd be the
Gotcha.
best way to do that.
All right, I think that's fantastic advice because I know at least multiple times a week people are always having to reset their passwords, especially if they just went with the generic ones.
Yep.
Not only they're just admin, but also the more advanced ones because some websites now actually provide, we'll call it an
Hmm.
encrypted looking password that has the capitals and lowercase and all the
Yes.
symbols. But for them to remember that, they need some sort of passkey. So do you have
Correct.
any sort of software recommendations for the people that are using very complex passwords at where they can store items safely?
The best thing I have found, especially for those that are working from home, is one of these, a book, because it's at your house. It's not going to get compromised unless somebody breaks into your house. It seems that all companies, NextPass or any of the other ones, all of them are targets, and eventually they will become compromised. If you have it in a book in your desk drawer, they have to break into your house to get to it. There is no way. There's no soft copy of it out there anywhere. So that's old school, but old school seems to work the best a lot of times because it's not out there on the internet or interwebs or dark web or anything else. It's in my bottom left drawer, and they got to get through guns, gates, and guards and a big dog to be able to get to it.
So, are there any abbreviation recommendations? Because let's say someone does break in, or you're in a professional environment where, it's very commonly said, like, don't leave sticky notes on your desk
Yep.
or on your monitor or something like that.
Yep.
So, when it comes to it being compromised, someone gets the book. Now,
Mhm.
are there ways to abbreviate what you have in there to still remind you, such as like the website, the username, and then the password that still gives you
Mhm.
the hints, but doesn't let someone that compromises the book get to it?
Yes. Actually, in that book, I don't have any of my full passwords. I have the first like 6 characters. That way I know what the rest of the string is. And that goes, the only time that you wouldn't have that is like your what your username is. So like Jerry.Chappie at Gmail or Jerry.Chappie at Eagle Cybersecurity, depending on what is it, a just Jerry.Chappie or is it just J Chappie on what my username is. So I keep those written out, but I don't put out the full passwords in it. But you do run
Gotcha.
into a problem, especially for your home side, making sure that your spouse, significant other, that is known to them on what your rest of your passwords and stuff are, because we have to have I don't know, contingency plans aren't the right isn't the right term, but every day somebody gets hit by a car or something else bad happens, and we want to make sure that that bills and everything are still able to be paid. So one of the big things that we learned in the military is make sure that that stuff is all communicated, both either written down in a will or a trust or somewhere else that your significant other has all that good information.
That's great advice. So let's focus now on industry trends. So, what major shifts are you currently seeing in the industry?
A lot of people are keep talking about AI and wanting to shift over to AI and machine learning, but not understanding exactly what to do with it. Chat GPT and Gemini and all the other ones that are out there are very, very helpful, but until you come up with a need for it, it seems to be a solution looking for a problem. But those that do understand it, those that are able to come up with the right problem for that solution, are getting to be 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of the rest of the competition. So some of the people that are really understanding how to ask the right questions into the chat GPT or into the other AI systems, they're able to do the work of say 3 or 4 or 5 other developers and be able to produce better code and be able to do that faster. One of the things that I know an organization called Cognizant just got done doing is training the majority of their entire workforce of 400,000 people on AI programming, and they set the world record for the most trained AI workforce, like 65,000 people or something like that. And in a period of like 2 weeks, they had like 38,000 new applications and programs within the company that they were able to start using that will improve the efficiency of the entire organization globally. That is something that no other company or government has even attempted.
So, number one, that number is just even hard to imagine. Like, just imagine at your company if all of a sudden you had 3,000 new applications that you could roll out, right? That would almost be
Mhm.
like an overload for someone else. But let's talk about AI in your company. You talk about keeping things in paper because there
Mhm.
are no soft copies out there. So, do you currently use AI at your company?
We use AI primarily for trying to do red teaming. When we go through and do pen tests on organizations, we'll use AI to help with seeing about getting around firewalls and being able to get into routers and things of that nature. So far, that since we're not a developer company, we're a cybersecurity organization and a compliance organization. So we use AI for the compliance side and for the red teaming side. So when we do ITAR compliance, we'll use AI to be able to come up with where to look and where the compliance issues potentially are within an organization.
Okay. And do you use a orchestra of multiple AI tools? Do you have a homegrown one? Do you use open AI? Like where do
Primarily,
you get your AI from?
yeah, primarily right now we're just using OpenAI. We've looked into is it worth it yet to pay for it? And as fast as it's changing, for us anyway, it's not worth paying the extra money for, because we pay for it. 2 weeks later, something else is out there that's free that has more capabilities. So that's what we've run into so far because we did that about a year ago. Okay, by the end of the month, there's already something on the freeware side that was more efficient, faster and had more capabilities.
That's fair. So when it comes to protecting your own personal data and even the data integrity of your company, what suggestions do you have for people that are using AI?
Mm, to actually run through the scenario or questions that potential attackers would also use to make sure that the systems are configured and locked down to be able to not provide those types of avenues of attack. Because one of the big things we do is work with AI to be able to create scripts for getting around firewalls. And to be able to safeguard our own systems, we use those exact scripts and AI tools to be able to test our own systems. So, the term is eating your own dog food. We use those systems on ourselves first before we bring them out into municipalities or other companies, and that seems to help a great deal.
Okay. And then we're talking a lot about AI, but just the cybersecurity attacks in general and how much smarter they're becoming. How has that impacted your company and your growth strategies?
Uh, it's impacted it by us trying to figure out what areas we want to focus in on, because the avenues of attack that a lot of them are taking, are they going after major companies to try and get intellectual property, or are they going after banking companies to try and get money? So we're trying to work through both those sides and determine which areas are are in most need of our services. So far, right now, it's been in municipalities, mostly because anything with the government, doesn't matter the size of the government, they run very, very slow. They turn very, very slow. So those seem to be the soft targets that nation states or uh, hacking groups, whatever you want to call them, have been targeting, and just to be able to get in and be able to access the the city, the municipality's information, and be able to compromise those things. Plus, be able to pull money out. So that's where I've been seeing the most for us.
And is that one of those things that they are slow because of like red tape and there's too much legal process to go through, or what makes them slower than the rest of small businesses?
Um, it's probably a few things. One, everything has to be approved by the city council and the committee and stuff. If it's more than 10,000, more than $100 or a couple $1,000, so that takes a while. Plus, a lot of people are reluctant to change, and once you start down this road of change, everybody has to be on board. It seems. Otherwise, it's going to be, one person still dragging their feet and not wanting to change, and all of a sudden that becomes a weak link, and it becomes the primary target that hackers and stuff are going to go after. So that's the probably the hardest part, is getting the everybody on the same page and being able to free up funds uh, when you're able to get into when we're able to bring in risk assessments and things of that nature, to be able to get those done in a speedy manner, and also to follow up. Once we go through and do a vulnerability assessment, we go through and say, here's the items that need to be taken care of. Here's where it needs to be patched. These are the holes. Well, we also need to come back in a month or so to find out if they've all been done. A lot of times those haven't been done because the people that are supposed to do those have been sent on 3 other projects. And then the follow up also is a lot of times more cost, because, well, you still haven't fixed the ones that you said last time. And new vulnerabilities and stuff are coming up all the time, is the other problem that we run into.
Okay. So then when you're talking about, or let's focus more on cybersecurity in regards to how Eagle Cybersecurity is using it right now. So when you look at your company, what is working really well for you right now?
Mm, actually, mostly the what we've been using with Kali within the Amazon clouds. We've been using that to be able to do our red teaming from there. And that way, it seems that very few organizations are blocking connections from Amazon clouds. So we're able to use that to be able to get into municipalities far easier than I ever thought possible. So that's probably the best thing I found that's working out really well.
Okay. And so is that also implying that, like as an example, Microsoft, Azure, those sorts
Yep.
of
Yep.
cloud providers are also being blocked more frequently? So this allows you to have more attack vectors?
Um, well, I don't know if Azure or Google Cloud and stuff is being blocked more. We've just used the AWS as our first jumping off point, and it seems to have worked. So it's one of those things that it's working. So we're not gonna try another solution until this one no longer works. So it's one of those things. It's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. Beauty and the Beast reference.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. That's exactly where my mind went as well. So let's talk about on the flip side then. AWS is
Okay.
working really well for Eagle Cybersecurity. What's been the most frustrating for your company?
Um, some of these software packages that are supposed to do vulnerability assessments, there's a number of them, Nessus and other things. Some of those things work really, really well, but a lot of times they are being blocked for one reason or another. And so we try and do a security assessment just by doing a vulnerability assessment, because the first stage in being able to do a pen test is find out where the vulnerabilities are. And we found a lot of times that uh, Tenable or some of the other packaged vulnerability assessment systems can't get to the distant end. And even though you can ping it and stuff, but they're being blocked somewhere somehow. I don't know if it's by the ISPs, by the of the company, or uh, somewhere else. I haven't quite figured that out, but we have run into that a number of times to where those standard packages are being blocked from somewhere within the internet.
It's all up in the cloud somewhere. Something
It
up
is.
there is
It is.
happening.
hmm It is because we can do a trace route from my system to get there, but I can't get into where like Nessus is and be able to do a trace route from their system to get there. So I'm not sure where the breakdown is.
Okay. So when Eagle Cybersecurity is looking at their continuous improvement, where are the metrics that they're trying to find and improve? Like, what metrics are you really trying to drive for and improve over the next year?
Um, Mostly right now, we're looking at improving the number of contracts and stuff we have, the number of municipalities that we're working with, the number of countries that we're working with right now. We want to be able to get more into those areas because we know that nation states are attacking the small municipalities. There's a state bill in California where all municipalities out there above, I think it's 200,000 people, have to have a pen test done once I think it's every 24 or 36 months. And that works out to be like 900 municipalities for the state of California alone. And we want to make sure that they are, one, meeting the state requirements, but also that they're actually being safe. Uh, all those tax dollars and stuff, we want to make sure those stay there and are actually being able to be used correctly. There's no sense in their tax dollars going back to North Korea. So that's where our focus is over the next 12 to 24 months, is to try and help out a lot more of the companies, municipalities, the cities and stuff out in California. The second along those lines are hospitals. Hospitals both here in the U.S. and around the world all have the same problems. They have a lot of personal health identifiable information, PHI, and there's regulations on exactly how that is supposed to be managed, how it's supposed to be controlled, and a lot of places aren't. So we're trying to get in there to make sure that we're helping them as best we can to be able to safeguard all of that information.
And it's interesting you bring that up because you mentioned something that I keyed on was you were saying internationally. So how does cybersecurity shift from the United States compared to when you're outside of the country dealing with Europe, Asia, and so on?
Um, The biggest thing is, well, especially with Europe, they have GDPR regulations, which is that uh, everybody has to have the ability to know if their information has been compromised. We don't have the same type of regulations here in the U.S., but as far as like the hospitals and things like that over in Europe, that's the one of the keys is to making sure that those identifiable information has been scrubbed off of their networks. So that's where we've really been able to help out so far, is making sure that that information is locked down, safeguarded, and is destroyed in a timely manner that meets the GDPR regulations.
Gotcha. So going back to the metrics, we spoke about what Eagle is tracking for their own growth,
Mhm.
but what does that look like for customer success? What metrics do you track in order for them to have what they need?
So far, well, in the past, it's trying to validate and make sure that they aren't compromised. I know that's a low bar, but we want to make sure that they do stay safeguarded. We do a lot of metrics with them in regards to phishing attempts and phishing campaigns, things like that, to make sure that they are getting their training. One of the big things is being cybersecurity aware on what to do and when to do it and what not to click on. Because the biggest thing is don't click on things if you don't know exactly what came from. And that seems to be the biggest issue. But those metrics are, from what I've seen, is that running a cybersecurity campaign, a phishing campaign and stuff, and a um, training seminars with them seems to be the best for improving the company's metrics because all of a sudden their phishing compromises will go from like 70% at the start all the way down to only a handful, depending on the size of the organization. That makes a big difference because right now the number one way into the systems is the user on the inside.
And to the point, you already mentioned one of the key items, which is like, don't click on stuff you don't know. But what are like the top five things that they need to be looking out for to make sure that they're not providing access to someone outside back into their systems?
There's a couple of things. One, making sure that they have their uh, best term for it, I think, is limited use capabilities. So you only have the access within the network to be able to do what you need to do. People in HR don't need to be able to have access into the engineering side, and the people in the engineering side don't need to have access into the HR side. To make sure that your user accounts and stuff are locked down to where you can't traverse the network like that. Also, making sure that you can't add new software to the systems, making sure that the users aren't able to do that. That local admin privileges needs to be restricted. So that way, if you do click on something in a malformed PDF or something else where the malware comes in at, it's not able to execute, or it executes, but it only executes at the user profile and is not able to install itself into the system. So those are the big things that right now that we're seeing that would really help. Um, the other big one is actual documentation for compliance, making sure that all of those all of those parameters that I just mentioned, those are actually documented because for different organizations, there's different compliance requirements that they have, be it NIST, be it ISO 27001, NIST 853 or 171, things of that nature, to make sure that those things are all set up and documented. So when the compliance team comes in, it's able to be validated and verified that everything works. And the ability for compromise is a lot less. And like I say, the training is one of those things that needs to happen a lot more often because people seem to always be too helpful.
So when it comes to that of being too helpful, how do you reprogram someone's mind to still be who they are, which is being helpful, but at
Mhm.
the same time having their guard up?
Training is the best way to do that. And for them to realize that 90% of the time, the person calling, uh, I can't really make that statement. I don't know if it's 90%, but the person that's calling that's asking for that type of information should not be calling you to get that information. They should already know who the system administrators are to be able to get that information. A system administrator would never call the user in HR to, hey, can you tell me what your password is? Hey, can you tell me what the IP address is of your machine? Hey, can you tell me this? They don't do that. administrators don't need to do that. They already have all of that information sitting right in front of them. And that's one of those biggest issues that I've seen is that we are too gullible is probably the best term. We want to be helpful and not understanding what the ramifications can be. So the training is the biggest slice of that, of telling people this is why you don't give that information out. Or ask them a simple question. Hey, why don't you call Steve down in IT? He knows that information.
And so when you lock down a system to prevent people from installing potentially malware on their
Mhm.
computers, how or what recommendations do you have for small businesses that don't have an IT department to where the owner is the one having to manage all this type of stuff? What is the best way that they can make that a successful program in the smaller organizations?
A lot of small organizations outsource that to have somebody on retainer, to have an organization like Eagle or some of the other ones on retainer to come in and be able to set those up, to first set up the system when it's delivered, and then to be there if something comes up. We have to work a lot of times with third party IT providers to be able to get agents installed on systems. And when you're talking like small financial organizations or small manufacturing organizations, that's how they do it. And having somebody on retainer is a lot less expensive and than having your own IT staff, because your own IT staff starts somebody right out of a community college would probably start at $50,000 to $75,000 a year, and small mom and pop shops can't afford that for one person to be there managing 5 or 6 systems. So it's a lot more cost effective to be able to outsource that to Eagle or to some other organization to be able to do those types of things for you.
And if they were to outsource to an organization like yours or any organization, what are the key things they should look for to make sure they're partnering with the right company?
Um, there's like 6 or 7 items right off the top of how long have they been doing it? The individuals, what certifications do they have? Do they have security clearances, or have they had security clearances in the past? The fact that they don't have one now doesn't mean that they did something wrong. It means that they're no longer in a position to require it. So my my CSSCI clearance is no longer active because I'm retired, but I have held it for the previous since 2000, 2001, somewhere in that ballpark. I've held a TSSCI clearance. So making sure that those things are there, making sure that they are using some sort of checklist to be able to validate the configurations and the lockdown procedures of your systems. Um, if you're doing if you're doing any type of international stuff with ITAR, potentially with ITAR or NIST standards, there's a full checklist in there to be able to go through and validate and verify what it is that needs to be locked down. So ask those types of questions. How long have you been at it? How long has the company been at it? How long have you had certifications? What are other recommendations? Because it never hurts our feelings to ask for other companies that are using us. We'd much rather have them sell our services to show what we've been doing for them and how we've been keeping them safe.
I think that's great advice. Definitely, it's kind of like references when you're
Yep.
applying for a job, right? Everybody's always double checking for that actual proof.
Yep.
So let's go back to the California example. In that
Mhm.
California example, you said it was 300 or 900
Uh,
that are required on the pen testing.
it's at least right now I think it's at least 300 municipalities across the state.
Got it. So when it comes to trying to get into that area, right? You were talking about your
Mhm.
future is focusing on that and really hospitals. So
Mhm.
what would you say when you're reflecting on your company is the biggest item that's either slowing you down or holding you back from getting into those areas?
Um, Probably a couple things. One, finding the right person that can say yes. We find a lot of people that can say no, but it's finding the right person that can say yes, that can actually understand what services and stuff we're trying to provide, and to be able to do a comparison between have they used anybody already, and if so, what was that report, and to be able to help them on that, and to finding the right person is always the hardest part, and then to see how long it's going to take for the approval. Even though this is a requirement from the state government that they have to do it, it still has the full long tail behind it for getting the approval done. Um, and then what all is in scope is the other big thing on that one. Because once we find the right person may be able to say yes or no because they have control of the purse strings, but they don't have an understanding of the scope that's needed. Do we need to go into the Department of Transportation? Do we need to go into the fire department? Do we need to go into the police department? Do we need what areas within the organization within the city are 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 fair game or in scope for being able to do that type of assessment? So we want to make sure that that's communicated correctly, because the last thing we want to do is be doing a pen test and tip over one of their 911 servers and disrupt their 911 calls. That would be a bad thing. So
Definitely wouldn't be good, but it would teach them how to experience a crisis situation, right? Just the cyber attack, not an actual 911 call.
Exactly. So yeah, BCDR, business continuity and disaster recovery are keys parts of that because, well, right now California we know has fires and they have earthquakes and they have other issues and stuff. So we want to make sure that they are able to go through the disaster recovery process and procedure to be able to come back without being compromised. Because during a disaster, our security protocols a lot of times go out the window, and we trying to walk through places to make sure that that doesn't happen. And that goes back to the training. One of the aspects of that is the training of the people to make sure that they know what to do and when to do it. So that makes a big difference also.
So, Jerry, as we get to the end of our podcast, do you have any final words for our listeners, both for those that own their own cybersecurity firms or technology firms, but also just the individual? What would you like to leave them with today?
Um, it's definitely time to change your password. If you've had the same password for the last 3.5, 4 years, 5 years, it's time to change it. But also change it and put it someplace that's secure. In your house is by far more secure than any of the ones that are online. And make sure that the same password is not being used in all three of your bank accounts, and it's not your dog's name or something simple like that. But definitely change your password and make them unique for every one of your accounts, and that will make you a much harder target going forward.
Wonderful. Jerry, thank you so much for all the information that you provided today. I definitely think I need to go update some of my own passwords, but for everybody else, take action. Don't sit here and just listen to the podcast and do nothing. If you are listening to Jerry and realize you have a password, before I even finish this sign off, I want you to pull up your browser right now of whatever site you need to log into and go change that password. But again, Jerry, thank you so much for your unique perspective, focusing on the cybersecurity and also all the amazing work you're doing at Eagle, excuse me,
Mhm.
Eagle Cybersecurity. So for our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about Jerry and his team and the company, head on over to eaglecybersecurity.com. They've got a ton of valuable resources, a pretty cool website, and services to strengthen your organization's defenses. So Jerry, thank you again. And for everyone tuning in, thank you so much for your time. I hope these podcasts give you a lot of value of ways that you can implement these own practices in your own business or even come up with your own ideas to create that next best thing. So this wraps up today's episode of The Digital Shift. And as always, stay secure, stay innovative, and we'll see you next time. Jerry, thank you so
Great,
much.
great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks.
Hey there, it's Darren from The Digital Shift. I wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to check out the links in the description to learn even more information of everything we went over today. But if you enjoyed this podcast, then you are absolutely going to love this one. And if you're looking to look deeper into the technology that we go over in these videos, then go ahead and check out this one here. Regardless of which one you pick, you're going to walk away with something new. As always, I'll talk to you in the next one and keep being awesome.